Well, here I am at, I guess, it's what I consider home base. Made it up to where I keep the boat, which is straight across behind me. This is full-on home to me. This is where I entered man's world, my first job ever, commercial fishing out of here, way back in the day. So, just burning around. Getting used to this boat, and I will inform the public shortly of what the schedule will be for doing salmon and halibut charters out here. Lots of storytelling. Home. Nobody's here. Nobody but the crazy animals. It's starting to rain outside, and I got some time. So guess what I'm gonna do? Gonna get some emails read. There's so many of them, and I'm gonna really be getting busy soon. Yeah, I'm not sure what days I'm going to be available yet. We haven't made it official, but there will be days available for salmon and halibut on the west coast of Vancouver Island on the Barkley Sound with me during June, July, and August. That's it. So, any of you out there want to do that? 3 days maximum if you have to. There's also two other boats available if there's a corporate gig going on. I don't know. We'll see. My other two buddies they're at it full time. I got too much on the go to guide full time, but I like doing it. But I'll keep everybody officially informed soon. Now listen to this. This is titled "I Saw Bigfoot." Begin letter that you may read to the public. Okay. I was bait fishing on the beach of a lake in northern Arizona. I heard some shooting over the hill on the other side of the lake. The gunfire was from multiple semi-automatic rifles and pistols. I did not hear anything flying over my head, but my alertness peaked. Across the lake, I saw a Bigfoot walking briskly from right to left, and it had long arms swinging in very long strides. There were 3 fishermen on the other side of the lake, and he was walking toward them. I held up my hand and measured the height of the men between my thumb and my finger, then compared that with the height of the Bigfoot. It was half again as tall, which would put it at about 9 feet tall. The 3 men quickly left and walked to the parking lot behind me. They were walking fast and looking back like they were scared. The next day, a guy with a small backpack went over to the other side of the lake and returned about an hour later. I presume he took castings of footprints. The following day, I walked over to the other side of the lake with the intention of casting footprints, but when I saw them, I freaked out. I got the heck out of there, swearing I'd never go in the woods again, and I haven't until about 10 days ago. I made a trip back to where this all happened because it is trout season here in Pennsylvania, and me and a few buddies all went for a weekend trip, and I brought up my story about my encounter, and honestly, to my surprise, it was a lot different than the last time I said something and got made fun of about it. But these friends actually listened to me. And we all decided that after fishing in the morning, I would take them to where I had my experience. Going well armed, of course, we started our trip into the deep woods that to this day is still private property, owned by the same old man that has to be in his late 80s. After walking around and being lost half the time, I finally found the right hollow where it happened. As I was telling them that we had finally found the place, one of my buddies, to my amazement, found my climber still in the tree where I left it 14 years ago. Wow. As we went to inspect it, he brushed off all the leaves and sticks off the seat, and under all the debris we found a smooth, polished stone about the shape of a finger. I will send a photo of it with this email. But the whole point of this email is to thank you for letting us have a safe place to share my encounter, or I would have never got the courage to tell them about it, or go back into those woods again. I'm not sure where this rock came from, but it was in the seat of the climber that was still there all those years later. which gives some insight to how remote the place is. And there were 5 of us that witnessed it. I won't give out any of the names because they didn't ask permission. Thanks again for everything, Josh B. That's definitely a different kind of stone, isn't it? Wow. And I think what I'd be curious about, Josh, is I'm just going to save it into my album so to make sure that I put it in the video. I'm guessing that was buried in leaves, right? I wonder if that was left there right away. And I wonder if the 14 years of leaves and debris were on the top layer. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if that rock was right tight on the seat without debris in between it, which would point to the fact that that being may have left it there. Right? That's a pretty crazy find, man. I'm sure somebody who's going to be familiar with artifacts is guaranteed. I'll guarantee you they're on this channel watching this shit. And I'll bet you somebody's probably going to chime in the comment section below about what this is, where it may have came from, what it used to be, what it is, and or they're going to email me about it. Thanks for that share, man, and congratulations on going back out there. That's great news. It's another victory for us, right? If anybody has people they're scared to tell shit to, just send them a video from here. Send them any one of these damn videos to somebody who you are hesitant to talk to about what you saw, but didn't ask to see, right? Maybe that'll work. I got my eyes glued on the goat gangsters and the chicken gangsters. They're right in the doorway of the shop. They're looking around like they're wondering what they can get into. Little bastards. But anyway, Josh, that's great news, man. I love hearing that. I love hearing that people went back into the woods and pursued their passions after coming here. It makes my time worthy. Reference your post Sasquatch DNA facts on March 31st. Let's title this one. Steve, you mentioned the 15,000-year-old DNA manipulation and the DNA showing a human mother and unknown father. This lines up perfectly with the biblical and extra-biblical tales of Genesis 6 and the first book of Enoch, respectively. Don't write me off as a Christian not too soon. I'm a 40-year law enforcement veteran. I've seen and done things most men can't imagine, and have had a very colorful career. I have 2 degrees, one a bachelor in theology. I say all this to say that I've done the deep dive into investigating this topic. This is a deep topic, and being brief will be a challenge, so here goes. Gen 6 describes the fallen angels, watchers, taking, literally, human women as wives. Their offspring would result in giants, Nephilim / Rephaim. These beings blatantly messed with human and animal and created creatures of Greek mythology and others. Yes, they had the intellect and science to do it. Think about their origins. Their goal was to taint the perfect bloodline of Jesus Christ. It also explains why people thought God was a homicidal maniac telling the Israelites to wipe out an entire village, men, women, and children, even animals, and was recorded in the Old Testament. Research shows this was a Nephilim village. The key is that they weren't fully human. Much of the OT makes sense when you realize all this. I can go into more detail, but for brevity, I'll just say that the tainted DNA is still out there. Human mother, Nephilim fathers. As I've said before, there is a spiritual component to this that most people are unaware of. That's why the women you read about who rebuked the thing in the name of Jesus had results. I know this is a hit and run on a heavy topic, but I hope it sheds a little light on things. Keep up the good fight, Steve, Gray Scout. All right, man, thanks for that email. We've had literally probably hundreds of similar, not exact, but similar. And I'm going to have to give old Edgar an email here pretty quick. I hope he hasn't been shut down for what he has. He's blatantly come forward. Who knows who's lurking in the backgrounds looking for somebody to shut up, somebody that counts. But what was said to me indirectly that it was not just a father on the father's side. the male DNA is made up of a few, let's just say, animals, and some have even been noted to be extinct. And that is what the male DNA supposedly is made up of. And that's a little bit of a what? But that is what the scientists have come up with after 3,000 samples, DNA samples. But like I said, they promised to share their findings, and I'm sure they will. I'm just gonna have them, like they're not busy, right? So, like we all are, and I can't stand hounding people. I just don't do it, but I will, I'll get on that and remind those guys that they have something they were willing to share with the people, and that the people are waiting. And very, very curious. And it is quite the topic, isn't it? Thanks for sending that in, man. It is quite the frickin' topic. 4 experiences. Steve, my name is Dusty. I have 3 personal experiences and 1 relayed to me by a young soldier of mine. First, thank you for sharing these stories and the experiences of the club. Second, a little background. Born and raised in southeast Louisiana. Joined the Army just after high school. Held top secret security clearance while in. Retired after 20.5 years. In 2016, and moved back home with my family. I grew up hunting. I've hunted in almost every area I was stationed and experienced much of the wildlife in each of these areas. On to my experiences. Number 1. When I was about 14 years old in '91, I was deer hunting adjacent to the Pearl River, border between Louisiana and Mississippi, about 60 miles north of New Orleans. As I sat in my deer stand about 45 minutes after sunup, I had a young buck and 3 does come busting out of the brush behind me. My back was to the levee of the Pearl River Canal, and I was looking out over a 5-year-old clear cut where timber had been cleared. This area is now part of that Boke-Cheto Wildlife Refuge. The deer only stopped briefly, bounding from cover to cover. They were snorting and blowing the whole time. After they got about 150 yards in front of me, they slowed a bit, but kept moving away. After I settled down from the excitement, I realized I heard something walking along the levee behind me. It had not dawned on me at the time, but it was bipedal. What threw me off was a musky smell. Knowing that wild hogs are all over the swamp in that area, I chalked it up to being hogs rooting through the area. The sound, walking, came from back left to back right, and sounded as if it was pacing back and forth. Whatever it was, it never came out to where I could see it. I did get an unnerving feeling for a few minutes that went away when the footsteps trekked off to my right. I never was able to see what it was. My dad confirmed it was hogs when I loaded into the boat and relayed my story to him. He said the hogs probably spooked the deer, as they've been known to push deer out of an area competing for the corn piles and acorns. The odor was explained away as well, being the hogs, as they have a pungent odor about them, which I've used to my advantage in hunting them later on. Number 2. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 10 chickens silently standing there listening. Oh, this place is a nightmare. Gong show. Number 2. After returning from overseas on my first duty assignment, I requested and was stationed at home at Fort Polk, Louisiana. Many say it sucks, but it's only 4.5 hours from home. So, we spent a lot of time training in the box, large training area of JRTC. Many of my fellow soldiers, knowing I was from Louisiana, asked questions about the woods and wildlife there. I told them the usual: watch out for copperheads, water moccasins, and the hogs in the area. Other than that, not much to worry about in the area. One of our squad leaders jokingly said something to the effect of it being great habitat for Bigfoot. We laughed it off, but it stuck with me. By this point, I had become interested in the topic and sporadically read what was available and watched shows about it. Much of the training in JRTC is force on force, with the famed 1/509th Geronimo. They are a unit whose only reason for being at Fort Polk to act as bad guys against units rotating through for training. One of our trainings was squad movement and drills. What we were tasked with was to move from point A using land nav to point B and recon the area, reporting back any activity we saw without being detected. During our movement, we spotted an individual in a ghillie suit moving through the woods, approximately 200 meters from the base camp. We were to recon. After the movement, we returned and reported what we saw, including the sentry who was patrolling as a lookout. Toward the end of the after action review, AAR, one of the guys reported that the base camp did not have a roving patrol, nor did they have any sentries posted on observation posts, OPs. They did not know who it was we saw and sent others out searching for the individual, as all personnel were accounted for and hunting was restricted from these areas while training was ongoing. Number 3. In 2005 to 2008, I was stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado. While there, my family and I enjoyed spending time hiking and venturing all over. We encountered several of the beautiful native critters, to include mountain lions and bears. During the spring of 2006, I thought I would give it a go and try turkey hunting near the base. I found a spot that was in an open unit and had several reports of good toms in the area. I got to the parking lot a little after dawn and just enough light to make my way through the brush without the use of a headlamp. I found what seemed like a good spot and set up, facing part of the Cheyenne mountain range, south of Pikes Peak. As the sun rose, I began calling and had a few turkeys gobble in response. Unfortunately, where I was, I couldn't tell exactly where they were because of the way the mountain made everything echo. There's an old gravel road to my left, about 300 yards. At about 8:40 a.m., I heard a vehicle coming down the road and glanced over and saw a red pickup with at least 2 guys in it bouncing down the gravel road, driving west through a pass. Excuse me. As they approached the pass, I caught movement out of my right eye. I could see a large, dark-colored thing moving north away from the road. I picked up my binoculars and I found it again, as it began to scramble up one of the draws. I watched it move from my left to right, covering a great distance in almost no time. Just before it began scrambling up the rocky draw, I saw it turn and look back at the truck. In my mind, I first thought a bear. However, after a few minutes, I realized it was on 2 legs and not 4, running across the ground about 300 yards from me. It covered about 500 yards of brush and rocky terrain way quicker than a bear or anyone could have. As it scrambled up the draw, I could see it reach out with hands to grip and pull itself up. It seemed like the blink of an eye, and it was up and out of sight, behind the trees and brush. I was out there trying to wrap my head around what I'd just seen. I finally gathered my gear and gun and began moving back to my truck. It hit me about the time I reached my truck exactly what I just witnessed. Whoever was in the passenger seat of the truck, I believe, saw it too, because that is what directed my attention to the movement. He had pointed quickly, and the brake lights of the truck had tapped just before I saw the movement. As I loaded my gear in the truck, I began shaking, similar to after shooting a deer and processing what just happened. That excitement. At the same time, though, I did not want to stick around. Later, I looked up on the web and found there had been several sightings reported in and around the area. Unknowingly, I contacted the asshats and reported mine. They called back and wanted more information. I gave them what I said here, and they confirmed that several reports had been made in the area I had hunted. And that was all I heard from them, nor have I reported anything else to them since. Later, I was speaking with one of my soldiers from the area. He was from Alamosa. I told him what I'd seen. He said, "Yep, they're here. They're all over the place." Me and my uncle was elk hunting about 5 years ago, and my uncle put his hand on my shoulder telling me to stop. We'd been trailing a herd with a good bull that was bugling his head off. We were up on a ridge. The herd was down below, and my uncle just pointed to the opposite ridge. He said, "We're not the only ones hunting today." I picked up my rifle and looked at the scope, and my uncle smacked me. He said, "Don't do that. You'll piss them off, and we won't make it out of here." He handed me his binoculars, and I saw a large, hairy man tracking the elk. I picked up my rifle and looked through the scope. and my uncle smacked me. He said, "Don't do that, you'll piss them off and we won't make it out of here." He handed me his binoculars and I saw a large, hairy man tracking the elk just like we were from the opposite ridge. And that's when my uncle told me it was time for us to go and that I needed to be extremely careful when elk hunting the area. He said, "If you're ever by yourself in here and you come across one of them, tell him that you're just leaving and back away slowly. If he rushes you, because some will try to hurt you, do not hesitate. Shoot and don't stop until you see him drop. Don't ever speak of it." So me and my uncle eased back down the ridge where we came from. I told my grandpa when we got home. He confirmed he had several sightings while elk hunting there. He also confirmed to leave, but if attacked, shoot until all your bullets are gone. So yeah, I know what you saw. Welcome to the family, Sergeant. Well, number 4. While stationed at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, a friend of mine, fellow soldier I met at an early duty station, I would go out night fishing. This is our time to catch up when we could, as he was a drill sergeant and didn't have a lot of free time. We both love being in the outdoors and find it to be a calming place for us. He, being from West Virginia, spent his life hunting and fishing as I did. We spent much of the time contemplating the meaning of life and the state of the world we live in. One night we were fishing a fairly secluded little creek. It was heavily wooded and only a faint game trail led to the water's edge. At the water's edge, there was enough of an opening for 2 to 3 people to stand about 5 feet apart and fish together. The spot reminded me of home, as it was heavily wooded and thick across the creek and very swampy looking. All night, the night sounds and critters of the swamp had been fairly vocal and active, and then all of a sudden, it went dead quiet. So quiet that DJ and I commented to each other about how quiet it had gotten. We just stood there listening. After a few minutes, we heard what sounded like someone walking to the edge of the creek and then stepping over in the water. We heard what I can only compare it to as someone reaching down and washing their hands off in the creek. Then we heard the telltale sound of it walking across the creek. It moved from in front of us, diagonally across the creek to our right, and stepped out onto the bank. We heard what sounded like someone digging in the grasses off to our right. Again, we said nothing, nor did we move. I doubt either one of us even breathed during that time. After a few minutes, whatever it was walked back across the creek, exited, and moved off through the woods back in the direction it had come from. After it left, the woods slowly began coming back to life with the sounds of the swamp critters. It even sounded like we could hear the creek flowing again. It was a dark, dimly moonlit night. There was just enough moonlight to see ripples when they passed through the moon's reflection. Neither one of us had our headlamps with us. We had left them at the truck, as we could just make out the game trail without them. And being somewhat familiar with the path in the daytime trips. We never saw a silhouette or anything of the thing that walked into the fishing hole. Afterwards, we both just stood there contemplating, speaking in soft tones about what it could have been. DJ did say he had heard old-timers in West Virginia talking about the wood booger slipping into the creeks while they were fishing. After about 10 or more minutes and no more fish biting, we eased back to the truck, loaded our gear, and left. We weren't 100% convinced it was, but stated the strong possibility of it having been a Bigfoot that visited our fishing hole. Later, I went back to that spot a couple days later, and I found where mussel shells were dug up out of the bank, and it looked like some of the swamp grasses had been uprooted and taken as well. I could not see any tracks, footprints, or anything else that confirmed a large being in the area. I did attempt to walk across the creek on the angle I believed it had taken, but was waist deep by the middle. Whatever it was tall enough that the steps/strides were heard as it crossed the creek. I would compare it to me walking across a creek of about 3 foot depth, and I'm 5'9". And there you go. More members of the Club of No Return. It sounds like your relatives are very familiar with these beings, right? And don't tell anyone, they always say. Never tell anyone, everybody says. Well, we're not doing that anymore, are we? It's time to talk. Thanks for sending that in, man. I appreciate it. And many people, many more people appreciate you as well for doing that. Big time. Let's get one more out, and then I have to go in and get clean and start smelling like a human instead of fish. This is titled A Curious Being. Dear Steve, came across your YouTube channel and found you to be an interesting and genuine person. My gut feeling of you. Please don't mention my name, but my alias is John Smith. I'm 58 years young, an outdoorsman and nature lover. I fished professionally and hunted when I was younger in life. I was 18, an avid hunter and fisherman, growing up in a rural lake with much abundant wildlife. My childhood was filled with exploration of my surrounding flora and fauna. In those days, there was nothing holding me back, i.e. scared of being abducted by a serial killer or attacked by a wild animal or things a helicopter parent may be afraid of today. Helicopter parent. Yeah. My parents were elderly, and I was always given the freedom to find myself and my muse in life. In October 1979, I decided to plan a hunting trip not far as the crow flies from my home, but far enough to be away from civilization. I've hunted this particular area before and was aware of my surroundings and ways to get around without a compass or map. 10 days prior to hunting season, I decided to go on a scouting trip. The area was heavily wooded with Douglas fir and vine maple. Blacktail heaven. Oh, I read this one. Why is this not marked as red? Son of a gun. I don't get it. All right, gotta go one more, and then I gotta get stinky fish clothes. Get clean, get my face shaved for crying out loud, and start acting and smelling like a human again. Those pesky IR lights. This is my comment to your review of the great observations of the fighter pilot. Good education for anyone, and thank you for everything, man. Rob Duvall. I've had hundreds of excursions. I consider field studies a necessity if one is going to make any progress at documenting and understanding the culture and daily routines and culture. I took phones or a DSLR or both. It was not to catch them, to take pictures of them whatsoever. It was to document what they do. I was never armed, and some people would consider me stupid for going into these areas unarmed, where I typically go there are no grizzlies, just black bear and cougar. I bring up the gun part because the Sasquatch do not like guns, and it instantly changes the dynamics of the encounter, especially when a clan is nearby. I take that chance because I have a pretty good idea of who they are and where we sit relative to each other in terms of history and hierarchy. I let them know why I'm in their area, and I respect their culture, their families, and their innate need to protect their own. It isn't any different than ours. I have had my personal sovereignty violated by them on several occasions. Rather than just let it go, I use those opportunities to come to an understanding with them, to establish that our rules have to be respected just as I respect theirs. I was specific. Without this, they only considered their rules. The violation stopped, with the exception of the kids doing things from time to time. I remind them that their parents have come to agreement with me and that they are not to do those things anymore. I've been zapped several times. I've had freshly charged batteries drained within minutes. I've had to restart my phone several times. This is the only time my phone gave me trouble. On the other side, I've walked right into their homes without warning and startled the kids there. Not a good thing to do, so I'm very careful regarding my presence in their areas when going deep. I've seen their graves on many occasions. I'm highly respectful in these instances for the same reasons we would expect them to be around our predecessors who have passed. They celebrate those who have passed. I know this because I have seen the aftermath of a gathering to pay homage, and it was quite clear that they had taken place there. It is obvious that the IR LEDs that ring a trail camera that light up the area with IR for a night shot when triggered are the equivalent of a street light to them. I never have owned any trail cameras for this purpose, nor would I consider it. It's highly disrespectful to go into the areas and place these, and it's a glaring advertisement of our stupidity and ignorance. People are still doing it. A picture will never prove their existence to anyone, so don't bother. I only do excursions during the day, my time. The night is theirs. If you're going to study something, how you do it matters. These are people, not animals in the sense of how we tend to view animals. They are sentient and intelligent to a high degree. They have rules they abide by, they have a culture, and they have a great deal of common with us, though naturally they are different. From accounts you can tell when they regard one of us with a mutual respect and when they regard us with disdain or a high degree of mistrust. It is in their response and their actions. There are other hybrid creatures in the forests, many actually. The rules are different with them. They are different from the Sasquatch in terms of whether we should approach them and their abilities to accommodate us on mutual terms. Much has to be sorted out in terms of what has happened to humans who have gone missing and never returned. The reasons are broad and nuanced, and the culprits are not of a single nature, nor are the reasons consistently because of one thing. It will require much study. The authorities cannot tell the public it is because of the authorities cannot tell the public it is because of these creatures. The authorities have a tough task in that regard. The federal government has heavy-handed tactics to keep the lid on it. So, local authorities are between a rock and a hard place. While some know, they cannot easily reveal it without serious repercussions. Consider and respect that. What is behind the cover-up? It is a policy/narrative that is thousands of years old and is a global affair. How many institutions have been around that long and had consistent control over matters this important globally? Historical record studies will reveal all of this to anyone who wants to know. My studies have included deep dives into history, extensive study of encounter accounts, extensive fieldwork globally, language studies by others, DNA studies by others, cultural studies by others, and myself, and studying the mechanisms that keep this under wraps, the deep institutions. I have scratched the surface. I'm not an expert, nor do I think experts actually exist, because there's always something missed or misinterpreted, and the only thing that is constant is improvement of understanding and change of knowledge context. Context is everything. It takes study from many different points of view to get that context, and it takes admitting you're wrong over and over and over, and making the effort to drop the old ideas and move forward admitting that it was a mistake. The context of who we are and who they are is critical. Origins are at the heart of this whole topic. Historical manipulation and narratives describe how we got here and what we need to undo to get back to the time before those narratives changed our perspective of ourselves and our world. That includes everything within our reach, including these other sentients, all of them. Without the right perspective and context, we are left doing dumb things like putting trail cameras out. It is an ignorant approach to a problem that is way too complex. And so just leave it to those willing to take on the complexities. If you want encounters, go for it. But be respectful and mindful. It isn't what you think it is. All right. Robert, we've heard from you a few times, I believe. And I have a feeling there's going to be a large handful of people here are going to be requesting that you share more. And more history of you and them. And possibly, there's also going to be other people saying, prove it. What do you got for proof? Right? You know how it's going to go. Probably in the comment section below or wherever else. But it sounds like you have a pile of knowledge you've been chewing on with your brain teeth. If you want to share more, please keep sharing more. Okay? Everybody knows my stance on it. We only learn from the people. If you can't go out and, obviously you learn on your own, but we as well only learn from the people. Okay? There's a lot to chew on. There's always a lot to chew on. Every single frickin' day I share all these emails. There's just so much to chew on. and try to make sense of and take in. It's quite the ride. It's quite the ride, isn't it? When you want to know everything. That is one hell of a ride to embark on. Wanting to know everything. Wanting to know the truth. Just wanting to know the truth is such a frickin' ride. And it's sad in a way because we are not told the truth from day one. That's such a sad fact. It's such a sad fact when you become aware of it. It's unfortunate. Truth, meaning, and what I mean by the truth, you guys, is the truth is what I mean is our truth. Like, who the hell are we? Who are we? Right? Who are we? What can we do? What could we used to do? What should we be able to be doing? I don't want to die not knowing. I don't want to die knowing that possible vital knowledge was intentionally kept away from me my entire life. Kept away from me intentionally. That's bullshit, and that is a huge, huge penalty. That's just nasty. But anyway, I'm done like dinner. I don't think I've slept too much in the past couple days, and I've been freaking all over the damn place. So I'm gonna get going. I'm gonna carry on. Hopefully get some rest. Keep knocking some more shit off. Keep getting more emails in, and keep sharing. Every single thing I get to be shared is gonna be shared with all you. So keep it coming in. There we go. The end of another adventure. That's the heater in the boat you can hear in the background, but I think if I could pass anything on to anybody right now, it'd be that this lifetime is a beautiful thing.